Well, there it is. Hello guys, welcome to another Warcraft 3 Reforged video. This time we're going to be taking a look at our Wowhead article, the Warcraft 3 Reforged models for the Dark Portal, Alliance, Horde and Campaign models. They say today's Warcraft 3 Reforged model preview covers a variety of buildings including the Dark Portal, Campaign buildings, Alliance buildings and Orc buildings. Let's start off with the Dark Portal itself. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you're enjoying this, make sure to thumbs up, subscribe and leave feedback on what it is that you see, what you like, what you don't like, the direction. Is it too realistic? Does it need to retain more of that original classic look that is a little bit more cartoony and fun and vibrant? You guys let me know. I appreciate the feedback. So this Dark Portal looks pretty on point. That's the snake. It very much reminds me of World of Warcraft. This does. Like the starting loading screen for classic, the giant braziers. I'll actually zoom in a little bit more on this model. Some of them won't be so necessary, but this one's a little bit more sort of smaller to look at. Giant stone. This is essentially the portal that the Orcs created alongside Medivh to travel between Azeroth and Outland. The swords with the runes looking very cool. There it is at more of an angle. Gives it a real 3D vibe, which obviously it is 3D, but it just makes it look more realistic. Even got some runes on the side of it. And it's kind of got this sort of worn look to it. As if the weather has been beaten against this for many a year. So I'm liking the looks on that one. Moving on. We have the Orc buildings now. So the Altar of Storms looks pretty much spot on to the original. Just obviously more glossy, more vibrant, like the colors just stand out more. The red, the sort of bronze-like statues, really cool. The tusks, the flag, that's like an A+, that is right there. That altar just looks fantastic. Now we have what looks like, is that barracks? I need to go back. I can't quite see the names. Oh, that is a barracks. I'm just kind of thrown off by this like lightning look to it. But look at the cage door. Really cool. It reminds me of like this kind of gladiatorial kind of vibe to it. And there's like a archery kind of practice, but with an axe thrown at it. It looks like it's got so much personality. It kind of reminds me of Age of Empires 2. You got a lot of buildings, but there's a lot of sort of little details like scattered around the building to sort of actually make it look like a real place where people would be. So that's really cool, those barracks. They don't, like the sort of hut bit doesn't quite push up as much as I'm used to it doing in the original Warcraft 3. But generally speaking, that's looking pretty neat. Bestiary, I'm a big fan of this one. Look at that. The animation for this one's really cool as well in game, because when you're building, this thing goes like up and down, being pulled by the chains. So I'm not sure. I guess the animals would be caged inside of here, and then maybe that's like an exit point. I'm not exactly sure how a bestiary would work for the Orcs, because the building structure itself is a strange thing, but it's cool, and it does look reminiscent of the original one. A slaughterhouse vibe. Yeah, but they don't want to kill them, do they? They want to sort of like grow and sort of train them. Now that's obviously a burrow. I mean, it looks like a burrow. It's got tusks, it's got spikes, it's got a little sort of place to hide behind for the peons to chuck spears at you. Really cool. Then we have, I'm not exactly sure what that one is. That looks like an upgraded town hall or something. I need to come out to see that one. Oh, it is. It's a fortress. Okay. So that's the fortress. That's like the maximum upgrade on the Orc Great Hall. So, little sort of nest at the top here to sort of keep a lookout. So, you got multiple sort of structures on top of one another. Very orcish with the wooden platforms, the giant skull, braziers, sort of like it's got more of an iron feel to it, which means that they're more upgraded, structurally, higher tech. So that's looking good. Now, that looks more like the actual barracks, but I assume that's just the upgraded Great Hall. So let's see if that's right. It is. Okay. That is the Great Hall. So it definitely gets a bit more of a boost once it goes into fortress form. So the nice flag here. It looks a bit more friendly, a bit more homely to the basic orc. And you got a very more basic nest. So on point. That's the Voodoo Lounge. Not the Voodoo Lounge. Spirit Lodge. This is where you produce like your shaman and your witch doctor. And where you used to produce the cowcaster, Spirit Walker. It's very slimline now. I noticed in the gameplay that I saw for orc and for human. But a lot of the buildings in some ways are bigger. But a lot of them can be actually smaller. So this is one of those ones that definitely has been reduced. It's got like the height, but it's almost been squeezed a little bit. So you've got these kind of wolf furs that you can see, and like even spikes, like tusks coming out of the wolf furs, so it gives it a tribal feel. There's this kind of like concoction brewing from within, so this is like the chimney and it's smoking out. You got the entrance, which is like a lovely rug, so they would be more sort of basic inside because they're more one with the elements and nature. Oh, thank you very much there, Dazzle, for the sub. You're late again, Mr. Witty Tisk Tisk. What do you mean late? How so? And again, this looks like a Great Hall. What on earth? How many of these have we got? This is the upgrade to the Great Hall. So the Great Hall's the original one. Then there's the upgrade of it, because I always kind of forget the names as we go. I know the Fortress is the last one. The Great Hall's the first one. So Stronghold. There we go. I wasn't going to get it otherwise. There's a Stronghold. Okay, so definitely more spiky from the original Great Hall. But it's got that Great Hall look. You still got this entrance point. You still got that flag. You still got that drum. So it is building up to become the bigger building that it will grow into. So I like the sense of progression there. Tauren Totem, much smaller than the original, but kind of cool in its own unique way because it really centralizes the focus on the main totem. Hence Tauren Totem. So this is where the Taurens are trained. They've got their sort of like Indian or Native American vibe with like the different levels and the looks. So like a face, you got the eyes, the nose ring, because the Taurens have nose rings, and then the mouth, the smoking braziers, and some sort of like grain nearby. Very simplistic, but very unique. That's the Voodoo Lounge. So there's a lot of clutter going on with this one, but the original one kind of had it as well. It is basically a shop, so you can kind of get away with that. A few sort of glowing doodads here and there to show and indicate that there's lots of items to pick up. There's even an axe here. There's a mask here. Bigger mask here to show the entrance, which looks like a draped cloth. So, or an animal skin that you would have to sort of like walk through to get entrance inside, and also through that way as well. And there's like this rope sort of just connecting stuff. I think there's going to be some sort of smoke maybe coming out of that. That war mill looks really cool. I think the original one has like 2 stony blocks, but this one's kind of got 1 stony block and then like 1 grill, as if like a furnace is inside of there. And you can imagine smoke coming out of here because they're working on upgrading the weapons, and then they can cut up the armor using this giant freaking chainsaw thing. Big old skull because they're orcs, so why not? Obviously spiky lumber as well. And you got this pit over here. Pretty cool. Then there's the watchtower. That looks a lot like the original watchtower. Just more of this kind of realistic entrance where it's kind of like a fur entrance or something. A skin that sort of like keeps the cold out, but you could just sort of imagine just sort of like lifting it up and walking inside. A few bolts of iron here and there to help support the structure that is mostly spiky wood. Very orcish indeed. Giant tusks. Then we're moving on to the Alliance. That one looks very noblistic. Again, I just used the word istic. I managed to throw it in there. It's not a word. It's actually very Alliance, because it's, well, it's blue, it's gold. It's very gold, especially the statue. He's got a big old sword that almost looks like the rank 14 Grand Marshal war sword, or sword from World of Warcraft. If you rank 14 in PvP. You got like these kind of cool looking braziers that have got more of a golden ornament style. And the stairs case is looking gorgeous. Very regal. So more sort of noblistic stone and pattern to it. It's a little dark. I feel like it should be a little bit brighter because it's Alliance. So I'd prefer the stone itself to be more of a kind of a light stone grey than a dark charcoal grey. Again, with this building as well, perhaps a little dark, although it could have been taken at night time because you can see the surrounding picture itself is quite dark as well. So some of these in-game screenshots are not necessarily pure daytime, nighttime. I'm aware of that. Just saying, this is what I'm seeing, so that's what I'm saying. Got the big old crystals. This thing will be spinning around. It looks pretty much on point, just very small. You could only fit a couple of people in there. The original one is very thick, like the entrance, the sides of the buildings is like here and here, so this one's tiny. Doesn't really bother me at all. It's fine whichever direction they want to go with it, as long as it symbolizes the original, which this does in many aspects. We are moving on to the workshop. This one's got a really cool vibe to it. That actually looks like a workshop, sort of like some crazy tinker gnome is inside and just concocting some crazy inventions as well. He's got like these tanks at the back that are funneling in like the materials he needs to craft whatever it is that he's doing. The giant chimney, wooden, but at the same time it's got this kind of bronze plating, so it shows a little bit of technology. I think that works for me. Oh, that's also like a track, a metal track, so like the tank would sort of come out of there. Now that looks like a tower. I think it might be one of the sort of campaign type towers, which can sort of shoot orbs. It's very magey. It actually reminds me of the Warcraft II Mage Tower. Obviously, the Warcraft II Mage Tower was just like pure white and not as flashy, but it's an arcane tower. Oh, right. So it's not campaign, but it is arcane. So that's the arcane tower. That's really flashy. Like, it looks expensive. Really expensive. I'm sure that's going to cost more gold in game now because of it. Look at it. Alright, we've got the barracks now. Looking great. I like it. It symbolizes the original. The 4 sort of tower parts with the main hall. A giant sort of ornament. Lion head. 2 big old Alliance flags on the outside. This definitely looks like a place humans would chill at. Maybe there could be a little bit more war-style symbols, like some shields or swords. Maybe a couple of shields outside by the doors. I don't know, some sort of like, not necessarily orc spikes, but you know, sort of like a grill or something by the windows to give it more of a kind of military vibe. Now this is the blacksmith, looking very good. Bronze, iron plating, very good for the furnace. And then you've got this thing that goes up and down, which basically blows the hot air. And then the smoke coming out the chimney. Now this is what I was kind of thinking, like you got like a swords and shield here. Big old sword there. So this indicates that this definitely has the upgrades for your weaponry. Now that's a cannon tower. That's a cannon tower and a half. Look at the door. It's like those door entrances to some of those kind of submarines and nautical type places where you have to really sort of turn them multiple times and then really heave this big heavy thing, which fits in with the cannon vibe because the whole tower itself is big, chunky, expensive and explosive. Really cool. Now we've got the farm. It's on point. Nice detail on the thatching. Looks like a homely little structure. Not big, not extravagant, just good enough for a peasant to get the job done. The Griffin Aviary is quite flashy in comparison to the original, but it gives it a grander look because the staircase looks very small. So obviously it's going to look weird when there's a unit that's like this tall compared to it, but you can't always fix that issue, let's face it. You've got to give and take a little bit here with the size of structures in comparison to the units in the game. It's an RTS. So this lets you know that reality, this is actually a really big structure that you have to climb all the way up, and then they would fly on and perch inside and stay warm by the fire. So really cool looking building. I'm sure it looks even better when it's starting to produce, because there'll be fire everywhere. It's got those kind of rocky vibes to give you that high up mountain feel. That's a guard tower. That's really cool. Really spot on there. That looks just like the original. That's really cool. Lovely vibrancy in the colouring as well, with the tiles, the door, the parapets. It's just, it's looking great. Now that's the lumber mill. Looking awesome as well. Big old axe stuck into a tree stump nearby. You got bundles of wood. Got a little tower here. You got the saw to cut up the trees, and then this is to sort of pummel them into smaller pieces, perhaps. Now that's the basic tower. That would be upgraded into a guard tower, arcane tower, or cannon tower. So very good. Does the job. No complaints there. Now that's a town hall. You got a little well here, you got the staircase going up, or just the normal entrance, and I don't see a clock yet. So it looks like it's in construction. It isn't actually currently finished yet, so perhaps when it's finished you would actually get a clock. So that's a town hall in construction. Now we're going to look at the neutral buildings, so starting off with the Naga one. This is the Altar of Depths, I believe. This is where you would produce Lady Vash and, you know, other Naga heroes if they actually existed. So, looks good to me. Very sort of underwater vibe. The corals, the sort of like the draping, the warmness to the stone. I've looked at some of these buildings in previous videos, so make sure to check the channel as well if you want to see more of this kind of content. Some of it overlaps, other bits we actually catch some new parts, which is really neat. This is really cool. Bright teal baubles, sort of give you that aquatic feel. I love the building. Just looks really good. That's a cage. So that's where a poor hapless skeleton might be inside as well, with another version of that model. This is like a human building, where if you go to like a village, it looks like a kind of tavern type building. It's really cool. Smaller structure. So you'd see these kind of buildings if you was visiting like, you know, Lordaeron village or something like that. You know, one of those kind of sort of like homely towns that the humans reside in. That's the coral bed. That's the food structure for the Naga. Looks really detailed. Gets the point across. That's how they sleep, apparently. That's the tavern, I think. It's got this sort of the door. What's it called? Sort of like the swinging sign. So you got the giant sort of like canisters, flasks, tanks at the back, sort of pumping in the alcohol to keep the brewery going, so that the tavern dwellers within can keep drinking. A little chimney. Doesn't look quite as cute as the original, but it does look still good. That's sort of High Elven or Dalaran architecture. Towers. That's is that where Grom drinks the blood and it turns red? That could be the fountain where he drinks from. And Mannoroth has his way. It's like a defiled fountain of life, says whoever. So that's a fountain of life, is it? But it's just defiled. I could always just check the name and see what it says. So we have to scroll down a bit to catch up with that part. Ah, yeah. Defiled fountain of life. So the fountain of life. I assume that the normal fountain of life won't look quite as spiky and aggressive. So not only have they basically changed the colour, maybe made these look a little bit more evil and ominous. The actual sort of like rocks themselves look very threatening. So the fountains are probably like the fountains of health and mana, probably going to have their own sort of style, which again is great. Like in Reforged, they're really going out of their way to give different flavour and style to these models, which is fantastic to see. That's the Dragon Roost. I'm going to kind of have to see how that looks animated, because it's always going to be a strange one. It's basically the original one looks really weird when you look at it. It's just this big giant dragon that's kind of curled around in this sort of almost conal structured building. Now that looks like another. That looks like definitely the blood, but those look almost night elven Or Pandaren, those structures on the outside. Let's have a look and see the name on that. Fountain of Blood. Okay. So that could be the one. There's got to be blood somewhere, hasn't there? Let's face it. Now that is definitely the Fountain of Life. Fountain of Health, sorry. So you can see that the rocks aren't anywhere near as spiky. It's got a lighter blue tinge to it, so it doesn't look quite as worn and evil. The waterfall looks like it needs a bit of work, but then again it's a static picture, so we don't know. Now is that the mana one? Because that's very purpley. It is. Because in original Warcraft 3, a lot of people sometimes struggle with the difference between the Fountain of Life, I keep calling it life, health and mana. Because they essentially look the same, except the mana one has got more of a purplish tinge to it, but not by much. Whereas here we can see that it's pinkly purple. So definitely different. And even these represent with the different colours. So that gives you a little bit more indication to differentiate. That's a fountain. That would be found in like Lordaeron. Very good. Just looks on point, to be quite frank with you. Nice little feature. Keeps the peasants entertained. Now that looks like the Frozen Throne. So big old glacier. The stairs coming up. You can't really see very well through it. Very scary. That itself is called a fruit stand, I believe. You can see the fruit on the side. Sort of like tomatoes and whatnot. You can clearly see, if you look in detail, that that's just kind of like a 2D picture kind of put in, and not each of these is like their own individual thing, which would be a bit much effort. Those ones look a little bit more sort of 3D-esque. But this is very reminiscent of the original fruit stand. The flag is interesting. I don't know whether it should have some sort of symbol on it or not, just to make it look a bit less plain. But it's a cool looking structure. You think that's the marketplace? I'm pretty sure that's the fruit stand. Let's see, shall we? Ah! Take that, Westland. Okay, that's the Goblin Laboratory. Welcome to the Goblin Laboratory. Temple of Kaboom. So this is looking very scary. Is that like a turtle shell on the back? Because I think it might be. And I don't know if I ever really realized that from the original. I think it's a turtle shell. It looks like a giant turtle. And the shell has been put on top. You got spikes. But at the same time it says welcome. There's like a little basement dwelling part. I don't know how you get up to this part though. Maybe it needs some stairs to go up here. Otherwise, how do you actually get inside of the building? It's kind of like inviting it. At the same time, it's totally threatening as well. This is the Goblin Merchant, where you would produce, or rather purchase, you know, Potion of Invulnerability, Scroll of Town Portal, you know, Potion of Invisibility. This is pretty spot on for the original. And I assume that there might be an animation here where the goblin sort of falls down here and then climbs up the steps and goes inside, because that's what happens in the original one. There's treasure chests galore, all sorts of cool items. The wowhead sort of rocket here, little chimney, so much detail basically. Now this looks like a sort of high elven structure, very nice and Warcrafty. I prefer this look to some of the hyper-realistic look that we've been getting, where it's somewhat blocky and the shapes are more obvious. You know, there's is it geometrics? Just everything kind of stands out at you more when things are more shapely, as opposed to the super realistic, smooth look that we have with some of the buildings or some of the characters, and therefore they don't really feel like they fit in with the Warcraft universe. This, to me, looks like it fits in a lot more. The colour's gorgeous. Like, it almost looks blood elfy, so it's got to be high elves. There's the green, little lanterns, the big blue doors with some gold ornaments. I'm going to scroll down and see. High elven buildings. There we go. So, that's from the side, from that angle. He took a lot of shots from these because these are looking gorgeous, to be honest. I really like this sort of design. That looks like a granary. So if you went to Anderhall, This is where you would basically chill with Arthas and then worry about some sort of plague that might be sort of threatening humankind. Now back to a high elven structure. I think this is where they produce units. So you can produce some high elf units from this, such as the high elf archer. That's in the campaign. I think that's the high elf barracks. Oh, it is. High elven farm. So that doesn't really look much like a farm, but I think what farm is really supposed to represent is a house, basically. It's where they would live. So it's a food structure. That looks like... What is that? Oh, that's just another farm. So there's different variations, or is that all the same one? No, it's not. Then we've got High Elven Towers. So they're looking a lot more basic. But at least they have their own distinct flair to them. And you would have like a big orb above here that would shoot out. So this one looks more like a tower. That's the Frozen Throne again. That's another throne, but it's not quite so frozen. That looks like a shop. It almost looks like where Gul'dan would chill or something. Or where one of those Storm Reavers would chill. Let's have a look. Oh, it's a marketplace. Wow. Okay, that definitely looks a bit different to what the original marketplace looks. Very high, but it's got this giant wooden log outside of it. The treasure chest. So it's somewhat inviting with the rugs. But there's not so much items out on display to let you know that it's necessarily a marketplace. But I like the look of it. That is the mercenary camp. So that looks quite different. But this is where you would essentially buy the mercenaries that belong to the map type. So Forest Troll Priest, Ogre Mauler, Mud Golem, that kind of stuff. So let's just double check. That is the mercenary camp. We've got Power Generator now. So this is more of a campaign. I can't remember exactly where this fits in. But it's obviously for the Horde. What with the symbolization. It looks really cool as its own structure. I just don't remember the Power Generator very well. Then we've got the Naga. This is the coral, not a coral bed. It's the it's their tower structure. And that guy would pop out and sort of shoot water at you, spit water at you. It's very simplistic. It's got that Protoss photon cannon 5 to it. Tidal Guardian. Okay, thank you there, Frostwolf. This is where you would produce, I think, the Naga myrmidons or the mur'gul units. This is some warp. That's the warp gate, I think, which is kind of cool because it's got this ring, very similar to Stargate, and the ring comes down and sort of like portals you to the next warp gate. That's the Book of Pedestal. That's the Pedestal book, the Book of Summoning kind of thing. It looks so realistic, this book, like the detail inside of that and the individual pages that would glow up and down. The runes are really cool. So Kel Facade looks like he would chill and spend a lot of time reading that. That's the Rune of Resurrection. Looking very good. Very fitting in with the environment that it will be. This is a snowy environment, but it would obviously fit in quite well with a green, grassy type area. That itself is a demon portal. I think this is where you would actually even produce Doomguard, Infernal. Let's have a look on that one. Looks really cool though. We don't have a name for it, but just the architecture is insane. Those red fel kind of crystals, the molten sort of fire, sort of like burning through the rock itself. So you can still see the fel influence. You've got the two guardians, but they've got like this glow to them that makes them look a little bit more scary. The braziers are like fel. It's really cool. It's the Demon Gate. That's it. And the face on the top. That's really neat. I love the stairs as well. Just like intersliced with some sort of red fire. And the stony floor. Now this looks incredible as well. That's the Skull of Gul'dan. Just a fantastic looking structure, to be quite frank with you. That's basically based off the Warcraft 2 one, isn't it? Because there's the one where you produce the warlocks in Warcraft 2. And it looks like that. That's neat. That's another demon gate. There's Frostmourne inside of the glacier. So Arthas has to essentially free Frostmourne. Arthur? King Arthur? Sword in the Stone? Now, this is actually where the myrmidons are produced from. I recognize this structure. This is where I think you produce the myrmidons in the Naga Royal Guard. Look at that. The fines just draping over sort of like the worn rocks. Very cool. And then there you go. There we go. We managed to get through it. So thank you guys very much for watching. This has been essentially a take on the Warcraft 3 Reforged models, Dark Portal, Alliance, Horde, and Campaign buildings. Some overlap, but some new stuff we haven't seen, or at least more detail in what we have seen. So hopefully you enjoyed this coverage. If you did, make sure to thumbs up the video, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Check out patreon.com/WTiiWarcraft. That's a good way to help support out the channel as well. And have a good day. Take care.